Professional actors, you go in and just jump in and do it, best of your ability.
Let me say, can I say one thing? Please. To me, Stanley, the great Stanley Kubrick, was an actor's enemy. And I can point to movies that he's done, the worst performances.
Every single day, I bring you stories straight from the Golden Age, moments that shaped Hollywood forever. If you love those untold tales and want to keep these memories alive, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's free, but it means everything. Now buckle up because this one's wild. Robert Duvall has finally broken his silence, and Hollywood is in total shock over what he just said. After more than 6 decades in the spotlight, the 94-year-old legend came clean about something no one expected. He admitted that there were 4 people in the industry he simply couldn't stand, not even for a minute. That's right, Robert Duvall, the man known for being Hollywood's gold standard of discipline, class, and raw talent, has always kept his cool. For years, he was seen as the quiet giant, respected, admired, and almost untouchable when it came to controversy. But beneath that calm, gentlemanly surface, there were grudges that never really faded. Deep down, Duval carried memories that haunted him through decades of red carpets, awards, and movie sets. Now, in a new interview shaking the film world to its core, the Oscar-winning icon finally decided to let it all out. He said things no one expected to hear from him, especially not after all these years. "I've kept my mouth shut for decades," he reportedly said. "But at this age, what am I waiting for? It's time to tell the truth." Those words hit Hollywood like a thunderstorm. It wasn't just about what Duvall said, it was about who said it. This was Robert Duvall, the man everyone thought would carry Hollywood's biggest secrets to his final days. For him to finally open up after more than half a century means these grudges ran way deeper than anyone could have imagined. And now, everyone's asking, who were the 4 stars that got under his skin so badly? The answer might just rewrite how we see some of Hollywood's most iconic friendships forever. These grudges ran deep, deep enough to follow Robert Duvall into his 90s. Sources close to him say these weren't just harmless disagreements. These were battles that changed movies, rewrote scenes, and quietly shaped Hollywood history. Can you imagine how different those legendary films might have been if peace had ruled those sets instead of tension? Now that Duvall has finally spoken up, Hollywood is holding its breath. Everyone's asking the same burning question. Who are the 4 names he's finally ready to expose? What secrets have been hiding for decades behind all those smiles, red carpets, and fake award show friendships? But before we get to the shocking list, it's important to understand why a man like Robert Duvall, a private, disciplined legend, finally chose to open up. Insiders say it wasn't anger that pushed him. It was reflection. That quiet moment of truth that hits when you start looking back at your legacy and realize honesty matters more than reputation. One longtime associate, who chose to stay anonymous, said Duvall had been watching too many glossy documentaries that rewrite Hollywood history. They show peace where there was tension, harmony where jealousy once burned, and that, reportedly, started eating away at him. The final straw came during a tribute event meant to celebrate his incredible career. Sitting quietly in the crowd, Duvall watched clips from his most iconic roles, scenes shared with people he secretly couldn't stand. The audience cheered wildly, but Duvall sat still, stewing as the narrator praised creative partnerships and lifelong respect. To him, it was all fake. He later told his interviewer that as he listened to those speeches about mutual respect, he couldn't help but remember how one of those actors used to deliberately step on his lines to ruin takes, while another had actually tried to get him fired from one of his biggest roles. That was the moment he'd had enough. At 94, with an Oscar, countless nominations, and a name carved into film history, Duvall realized he had nothing left to protect. The illusions of Hollywood no longer mattered. Truth did. He reportedly told friends that he wanted younger actors to see the reality behind the glamour. Even the greatest films, he said, aren't always born from harmony. Sometimes they come from jealousy, ego, and chaos behind the camera. And then came the first bombshell, a name that sent shockwaves through the industry. The first person on Robert Duvall's secret list was Dustin Hoffman, the man he once called a friend, now exposed as the credit thief who never stopped. Duvall's words were sharp. Dustin Hoffman once called him a friend, but that friendship wasn't what it seemed. Back in their early days as struggling actors in New York, They shared a tiny apartment, splitting rent and chasing the same dream. We were friends, or at least I thought we were, Duval recalled. At first, their bond looked strong. Long nights rehearsing, trading lines, and pushing each other to get better. But then, Duval started noticing something strange. His own ideas were showing up in Hoffman's auditions. He said he'd spend weeks perfecting a unique approach for a role, rehearsing it in their apartment, only for Hoffman to show up to the same audition using the exact same interpretation, sometimes even word for word. When Hoffman landed those roles, he'd tell people that Duval had merely inspired him. Duval didn't buy it. He snapped back, saying that inspiration was just a fancy word for theft. Even after both men rose to fame, that tension never really faded. During the making of True Grit in 1969, where Duval played the outlaw Ned Pepper, Hoffman would often call him asking for advice while preparing for Midnight Cowboy. Duval said he spent hours helping him find the right tone and rhythm for the role of Ratso Rizzo. But later, when Duval read an interview where Hoffman claimed he developed the voice by studying homeless people in New York, he realized his help had been erased completely. Never once did he mention our conversations, Duval reportedly said with disbelief. That was the breaking point. Things boiled over in 1971 when both men were up for the lead role in The French Connection. The part ultimately went to Gene Hackman, but what happened behind the scenes left a scar Duval never forgot. That was when I stopped taking his calls, Duval admitted. Some people never stop taking from others. They just get better at pretending it's collaboration. Industry insiders later backed up parts of Duval's story. Sources claimed that during casting, Hoffman went beyond copying ideas. He actually tried to sabotage Duval's chances altogether. He allegedly told director William Friedkin that Duval was difficult and uncooperative, using old theater rumors as proof. That rumor, Duval believes, may have cost him a career-defining role. That crossed a line, he said firmly, from competition to pure sabotage. Years later, when the two finally came face-to-face again, Duval didn't hold back. After decades of silence, the legend who built a career on restraint finally let his truth be known, and the fallout left Hollywood gasping. He denied it, Duval recalled, but I heard it straight from Friedkin himself. Even after hearing that, Duval never went public. Not then, not even close. He stayed calm, kept his composure, shared stages with Hoffman, smiled for cameras, and even offered polite compliments about his work. That quiet professionalism fooled everyone, making this new confession hit like a bomb. No one in Hollywood suspected that a silent rivalry had simmered for decades between two of the most respected actors of their generation. But if people thought that was shocking, what came next blew the roof off. Because the second name Duval dropped wasn't just anyone. It was Marlon Brando, the man he called the most destructive ego I ever encountered. This wasn't some half-hearted comment either. Duval didn't hold back for a second. He said what few in Hollywood have ever dared to admit. Great performances don't always come from great relationships. Sometimes they survive in spite of them. His tone was sharp, his honesty cutting. That's the reality of this business nobody talks about, he said, dropping truth bombs that echoed through every studio lot in town. When Duval finally said Brando's name out loud, even the toughest Hollywood insiders froze. Marlon Brando, the legend, the icon, the man many call the greatest actor to ever live. Duval didn't deny Brando's genius. He admitted it freely. He was a genius, no question, he said, but he was also the most destructive ego I ever encountered. According to Duval, Brando wasn't just unpredictable, he was dangerous to work with. A man who could sabotage an entire production just to prove he had control. Their infamous clashes on the chaotic 1966 set of The Chase became Hollywood folklore. A film mostly forgotten today, though it starred pure royalty, Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall, Jane Fonda, and Robert Redford. But behind the glossy movie posters, there was an intense psychological war raging, one that forever changed how Duvall viewed fame, acting, and respect. He revealed that Brando had a cruel little habit. He'd change his entire performance every single take, just to make editing impossible if he disagreed with the director's vision. He'd intentionally ruin other actors' coverage, Duval said, Brando called it protecting the performance. I called it what it was, professional sabotage. The tension boiled over during one of Duval's biggest moments, a crucial monologue that should have been a highlight of the film. Crew members have since backed up his story, saying Brando would make faint, almost inaudible noises off camera while Duval delivered his lines, just loud enough for the microphones to catch. Take after take was ruined. By the fifth ruined take, Duval snapped. I confronted him, he said, and what happened next taught me a brutal Hollywood lesson I'll never forget. Brando just smirked, that famous smug grin, and said, maybe you should be stronger in your choices. Duval paused in the interview, clearly still stung after all these years. That was Marlon, he said quietly. He'd sabotage you, then make it seem like you were the weak one. It was a power move, and a cruel one. That revelation shattered the world's image of their relationship. For decades, Duval had publicly praised Brando's artistry, calling him an inspiration, even while carrying the bitterness of what really happened. Years later, both men would appear in the Godfather universe, though they never shared a single scene together. Back then, everyone thought it was just coincidence. Now, it looks intentional. I learned more from watching Marlon than from anyone else, Duval admitted. But what I learned wasn't just about acting, it was about how not to treat people. He said he learned that genius never excuses cruelty, that no amount of talent makes up for ego. That mix of admiration and disappointment explained why Duval kept his silence for so long. Respect for Brando's skill, but deep hurt from his behavior. And just when Hollywood was still catching its breath from the Brando bombshell, Duval dropped yet another name, and this one hit way too close to home. The third name on his list? James Caan. Duval called him competitive to the point of malice. This revelation cut especially deep because, to Hollywood insiders, Duval and Caan had one of the most legendary on-screen relationships ever. Their chemistry in The Godfather was pure lightning. Caan's fiery Sonny Corleone clashing perfectly with Duval's calm, calculating Tom Hagen. It looked like brotherly love on screen. But behind the scenes, Duval says it was something entirely different. Hollywood fans are now realizing that what looked like the ultimate brotherhood on film might have been fueled by something much darker, a rivalry that went far beyond acting. Jimmy and I created one of the most believable brotherly bonds ever captured on film, Duval said. And we did it while barely speaking to each other off camera. Now that's acting. Raw, real, and fueled by tension. From the very start, trouble was brewing between Robert Duvall and James Caan. It began during early rehearsals for The Godfather, when both men were determined to stand out in a cast already packed with Hollywood heavyweights. Duvall, the disciplined craftsman, approached every scene like a sculptor carving stone, while Caan thrived on pure energy, charging through takes with unpredictable bursts that sometimes crossed the line from passion into chaos. Jimmy was competitive to the point of malice, Duvall revealed. He'd deliberately try to upstage everyone, especially me. Whenever Duvall had an important line, Caan would suddenly start tapping his fingers, playing with props, or making wild facial expressions, anything to steal focus. It wasn't just method acting, it was a quiet battle for dominance, right there in front of the cameras. That tension exploded during one of the film's most iconic moments, the family meeting scene, when the Corleones debate whether to go to war. The fiery brotherly energy audiences loved. It wasn't fake, it was real. What looked like passionate acting on screen was actually two men battling for control behind it. No one in Hollywood had any idea that the brotherhood fans adored was born from pure rivalry. That's what gave it that authentic spark, the mix of love and irritation that made every look, every pause, feel real. The tension hit its peak one afternoon on set. Duvall was quietly discussing his character Tom Hagen's motivations with director Francis Ford Coppola when, out of nowhere, James Caan barged in with that signature grin. He smirked and tossed off a comment about overthinking glorified secretary roles. The jab cut deep. That was the moment I decided we would never be friends, Duvall admitted. From that day on, Duvall made a deliberate choice. Tom Hagen would always watch Sonny Corleone carefully in every single scene. That subtle detail gave their dynamic, incredible fire. It wasn't just acting, it was truth bleeding into performance. The calm strategist versus the impulsive hothead. It was real energy that electrified every frame. What shocks people most today is how perfectly Duvall and Caan hid their feud for decades. They fooled everyone, smiling at reunions, joking during interviews, radiating brotherly warmth on red carpets. Hollywood adored their chemistry, never realizing how cold things really were once the cameras stopped rolling. When we were promoting the film, Duvall explained, we both understood what was at stake. We weren't going to let personal issues ruin something that important. So we smiled, told the right stories, and played our parts. That, Duvall said, was real acting, the kind that doesn't win Oscars, but earns respect. Behind every handshake and grin was a man protecting the art, even while quietly battling resentment. That quiet professionalism says more about Robert Duvall's character than any trophy ever could. Instead of letting pride burn bridges, he protected the work. He kept the film bigger than the feud. And that's what made The Godfather timeless. It's also why these tensions stayed hidden for so long, buried beneath decades of photo ops, rehearsed smiles, and red carpet charm. To the world, they looked like lifelong friends. But behind the flashbulbs and applause, the truth was colder, sharper, and far more human. Two brilliant men, locked in silent competition, creating magic from pure friction. While his clashes with Brando and Caan were professional, built on creative tension and rivalry, Robert Duvall's fourth revelation went far deeper. This time, it was personal. And what he said hit Hollywood right in its golden heart. The final name on Duvall's secret list stunned everyone: Robert Redford. Duvall didn't mince words, calling him the fraud behind the golden image. The moment those words surfaced, the whole industry froze. Robert Redford, the ultimate golden boy, the face of elegance, intellect, and integrity. For decades, he was untouchable, the symbol of Hollywood grace, activism, and artistic purity. Fans adored him, critics worshipped him, and his clean image became part of Hollywood's mythology. But according to Duvall, that image was just that, an image, a polished illusion carefully maintained for decades. Redford built the perfect public persona, Duvall said. The serious craftsman, the man of principle, the idealist. But behind that charming smile and calm voice, Duvall claimed, was something entirely different: a cold opportunist. He said Redford treated crew members like background furniture and saw his co-stars not as collaborators, but as competition. Their feud began on the 1984 set of The Natural, where Duvall played Max Mercy, the cynical sports writer opposite Redford's heroic baseball star, Roy Hobbs. What should have been a respectful collaboration quickly turned into tension that every crew member could feel. Duvall said he noticed early on that Redford often kept entire teams waiting for hours. And it wasn't because he was deep in character, Duvall recalled. He was on the phone, handling business deals, while everyone else just stood around waiting. That's not artistry, he said sharply. That's arrogance. As filming went on, the tension only grew. That charged energy bled into their scenes, giving their confrontations an electricity that audiences loved. But no one knew how real that heat actually was. Duvall claimed that Redford's image of artistic integrity hid something far more self-serving: a need to control everything. He pressured the director, Barry Levinson, to trim my role, Duvall said. He argued that my character's scenes weren't essential, but I could see right through it. He didn't want anyone else sharing the spotlight. To Duvall, it was never about the story. It was about control. He wanted to dominate every frame, Duvall explained. He saw strength opposite him as a threat. And the irony? It was brutal. In The Natural, Redford played a baseball hero whose reputation was questioned by a journalist, while behind the scenes, he was allegedly trying to silence that same journalist's voice in the movie. What truly infuriated Duvall wasn't just ego. It was hypocrisy. The gap between who he pretends to be and who he really is, Duvall said, is massive. He went further, calling out the contradiction between Redford's public preaching and private behavior. He'd stand on stage at Sundance talking about artistic purity, Duvall recalled, then show up on set demanding Final Cut privileges and veto power over other actors. That contrast between the saint in the spotlight and the tyrant behind the camera left Duvall stunned. It was, as he described it, the ultimate case of Hollywood double standards. The moment that sealed their fallout came during post-production on The Natural. Duvall confronted Redford directly about what he saw as manipulation behind the scenes. Several crew members witnessed what happened next, and it burned into Duvall's memory forever. Redford looked him straight in the eye and said, "You're a character actor, Bob. I'm a movie star. We're not playing by the same rules." That line hit Duval like a punch to the chest. "That's when I finally saw the fraud behind the golden image," he said. "I never looked at him the same way again." From one Robert to another, that statement cracked open the myth of Hollywood's good guys. Those smiling legends everyone thought were untouchable suddenly looked painfully human and deeply flawed. The golden glow surrounding Redford's reputation began to flicker, and for once, Hollywood couldn't look away from the cracks. In the days after Duval's explosive interview, the entire industry went into chaos. Shock, denial, and quiet panic spread fast. Soon, whispers turned into confirmations, and insiders began backing up Duval's story. Representatives for Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford, the only living names he had mentioned, released carefully worded statements expressing surprise at his remarks while stressing their deep respect for his legacy. But those responses, they sounded a little too polished. Behind closed doors, it was a different story. Crew members from The Natural began coming forward, backing up Duval's claims about Redford's behavior. A former assistant director from The Godfather confirmed there had always been visible tension between Duval and James Caan. Even Francis Ford Coppola, when asked about it, gave a knowing response. "The chemistry you see on screen sometimes comes from very complicated personal dynamics behind the camera," he said. And that was as close to confirmation as Hollywood ever gives. But it didn't stop there. The shockwaves kept spreading. According to sources close to Duval, several major stars privately reached out to thank him for speaking the truth. Finally, someone said what so many have felt, but never dared to say. One actor reportedly confided to a friend. "He spoke for a lot of us." The message was clear. Duval's courage had opened a door that Hollywood couldn't close again. As for Duval himself, he seemed lighter. Not bitter, not angry, just free. After decades of silence, he wasn't lashing out. He was simply setting the record straight. In a brief follow-up, he explained, "My goal was never to harm anyone's legacy, only to correct a version of history that's been polished into fiction." He added, "I've given 60 years to this business, and I've always treated it with respect. Part of that respect is honesty about the good and the bad." Duval emphasized that these weren't petty feuds or minor creative disagreements. They were long-term patterns that affected productions, careers, and people's lives. "These truths," he said firmly, "deserve to be part of the record, not just the shiny version we all pretend is real." Now, as Hollywood scrambles to process these bombshells, one question lingers like smoke over the Sunset Strip. Does Robert Duvall have even more to reveal? His final words in the interview were haunting and cryptic. Those four stood out, but they weren't alone. And with that, the 94-year-old legend simply stood up, nodded, and left the room, leaving Hollywood staring into its own reflection. Maybe, after all these years, it's finally time for the myths to fall and for the truth to take the stage. So what do you think? Was Robert Duvall right to finally speak up after all these decades? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, share this story with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe, because more shocking Hollywood truths are coming soon. See you on the next one.